If you'd like to follow a reading of the Word of God, I'm going to turn to Genesis this morning, Old Testament, first book there, chapter 41, and I'll read about 5 or 6 verses from that portion of Scripture. Chapter 41, and I'm going to start reading with verse 41. So Pharaoh said to Joseph, I hereby put you in charge of the whole land of Egypt. Then Pharaoh took his signet ring from his finger and put it on Joseph's finger. He dressed him in robes of fine linen and put a gold chain around his neck. He had him ride in his chariot as his second in command, and men shouted before him, Make way. Thus he put him in charge of the whole land of Egypt. If you study Joseph, he's a very interesting character, as we know, and we've read many, many times about his life and what happened in his life and what God did for him and how everything worked out to be the very best of life that he possibly could. I'm not going to look at that this morning, but I'm going to talk to you about when things go right. We all like to have things go right from time to time, and it's always nice to be on the right side of that. And we all seem to know how to react when things are going wrong. You know, when things are going wrong, we can pout, we can cry, we can show words of anger, express words of anger, we can slam doors or whatever else makes our day, in order to let people know that we're not too happy. We let people know that this is a bad day. Don't talk to me. I've had individuals or family members in our family that says, don't talk to me, I'm not in a good mood today. And there was an expression where I once pastored was, don't talk to me, I feel owly this morning. Or owly today, and don't give me any lip or anything like this. Don't tell me what has happened in this store or in this neighborhood. I just want to be by myself. I want to keep quiet. I don't want anybody to bother me. And if someone has done us wrong, we know how to gripe and complain. If someone happens to, do something we don't appreciate, we know how to express ourselves and to let them know that we're not very happy. And we've probably all done this in a day or a time or two in our lives, but we're not unchristian because we don't like some things. It's just a matter of being live and a human being. And even if we don't want to admit it, there have been times even in my life when I've not been very happy about what has taken place and what's going on. And, sometimes we've whined and fussed about things that are going wrong. I know this past year has been kind of a trying time for me. I hurt my back about a year ago, and it's just beginning to feel better now. And I've whined and fussed and fumed about it and wanted to know why, a shot can't do it, why a pill can't heal it, or whatever the case might be. But thank God that there has been people that have been able to develop medicines and so on that can give you a shot. And after about 6 epidurals, I'm beginning to feel a little bit better and know that, things look a little better, a little rosier now than things going wrong. We really don't know how to handle life when things are going right, though. If you've ever watched television and so on, and you see people like, let's say, in the Emmys or the Doves or whatever the case might be as far as award is concerned, you see them, their name is called out and they act very shocked, and they grab a piece of paper real quick or so on, and they run up to the stage and you're asked to come forward. Well, sometimes we turn red, sometimes our gestures look a little funny, and we walk towards the stage as if in shock. And it doesn't just happen in their situations, it can happen in church as well. An individual has done well, and we are aware of it, and we want to make recognition to that individual that you have done very well, and you've done something that is spectacular. And we call out their name and ask them to come for, or so we can give them an award or clap our hand or something. They turn red and they have dry mouth and whatever the case might be, in order to accept that reward and accept it. They just don't know how to do it. We walk forward to the stage as if we're in shock. And then a funny thing happens. We don't know what to say. We've come, our face is red, we've showed shock in our face, and we don't know how to, the words don't come very easy. We're kind of very slow in trying to deliver what we want to express and how thankful we are for what has taken place. We turn red, our gestures look funny, and we walk forward, like I say, to the stage as if in shock. And then the funny thing happens again, as I say, we're very happy, but we don't know how to handle the situation. Everything is right, it's good, and it's earned, but we are lost for words, and we just don't know how to handle right. I don't know how Joseph felt at this time when Pharaoh came to him and told him that you're going to be second in command as far as this land is concerned. You're going to be to the point where people are going to bow down to you, and you're going to be recognized as not as a king, but as a representative of the kingdom of Egypt, and we want you, everybody's going to bow down to you. And I'm not going to give you a course on how to handle right today, because all of us sometimes are at a loss of words, and we just don't know how to handle that right when it comes to us. But I do want you to know that there are times when things go right, and we need to acknowledge once in a while that we're at the right time, at the right place, and we got a bargain. Have you ever, ladies, you went shopping and you've wanted something, and you've looked it over, and several times you've thought about buying it and so on, and then you walk into the store and that item happens to be on sale, and you're just very, very thankful you happen to be at the right place at the right time. So there are times when things go right for us and we're happy about it, and we express it either to our husband or to our family. Look what I got today at a bargain price. Look what happened today as I drove and got recognized and so on. We got an advancement, maybe in our job, as we have worked and toiled in that factory or in that office for many months or many years, and all at once the boss gives us a reward if we get an advancement. We're just not certain how to accept it. We're thankful for it, but we just don't know how to say exactly how much gratitude we feel. We feel good and appreciative of what has happened. And the story of Joseph is an interesting story from his childhood to his death. Many of us have read and heard of his childhood or his life many times throughout the scriptures and throughout our church or Sunday school lessons and so on. And little did he know that there would be a time in his life when he'd be at the wrong place at the wrong time, and then he would be at the right place in the right time. We remember that his brothers didn't like him very well because of the fact that he had had some dreams, and as they were interpreted, it was showing that Joseph one day would be a leader of them, and they would have to bow down to him, and he would be superior to them and so on. And they just didn't appreciate all the emphasis and all the looks and all the appreciation that Jacob was giving Joseph at that particular time. For Jacob was showing favoritism to his son Joseph, and the other brothers, they were a little bit jealous about it. Very little. They were a lot mad about it. They were disgusted because we're not going to bow down to Joseph. At least that's what they probably felt in their minds. We're not going to go down to the point where he's going to be our leader. But his story begins with his brothers learning to hate him, as I just said. And at this particular moment that I'm talking about in his life, you remember Joseph had been sent out by Jacob to find his brothers and to see how things were going as far as the sheep were concerned, and so on. So as Jacob went and began to look for his brothers saw him coming, and they began to devise a scheme scheme in their minds that we're going to kill him. We'll take his coat, we'll wash it in some kind of blood and so on, and we'll take it back to Jacob and say some wild animal must have attacked him and killed him and so on, and this is all that remains of Joseph. They were so disgusted that they really had murder in their eyes. But as we know, as that particular episode begins to happen in Joseph's life, they began to have second thoughts about it, and so they lowered him in a cistern, hoping that that somehow he would just die there and no one would be able to find him, and they would be clear of any wrongdoing as far as Jacob was going to be concerned. But he was in the wrong place at the wrong time, we might say. And his life was holding in the balances. Then he would be at the right place, exactly where God wanted him to be. Because even though he was in that cistern and then he was raised up and sold into slavery, we find that he was in the right place at the right time. For as he was sold into slavery and he began to do his duties as a slave, he began to be recognized as a man of integrity, an individual that had care and concern about his job and so on. And then he was rewarded for that and accepted as one of them. And there he was given, as I said, he was given a place of a slave, and from there it got worse. I don't know how Joseph secretly felt about this, but he had every reason in the world to ask, what did I do to deserve this? Why am I in this mess? Why am I in this situation? I've tried to live a good life. I've tried to please my family. I've tried to love my father and love my brothers and so on. I really didn't do anything to deserve being being sold and being a slave to Pharaoh and so on. And then when Pharaoh's wife turned on her charms, Joseph was in the wrong place at the wrong time, we might say. She tore a piece of his garment for proof that he had been close to her, you remember. And she lied up a storm and had the Jewish man thrown into prison. She had told Pharaoh, her husband, that Joseph had made a pass at her and that she had rebelled against it and tore a piece of his garment and so on, and had him thrown in prison as a proof that Joseph had been there. And can the right place be prison, we might ask? Well, I hope none of us ever have to discover that. I don't want to have to go to jail to prove that I'm right. But for Joseph, it could be that he would be forgotten. He could have been all by himself and completely out of the minds of everybody else. But a strange thing happened in prison one night. Two men had troubling dreams and sought an interpretation. I don't think Joseph knew that he knew how to interpret dreams at that particular time, but God gave him the wisdom and the knowledge of how to do so, and he was able to tell them what their dreams really meant. One was not a good dream, for the outcome would be death. You remember the butler, as he told his dream of what had taken place in his mind, and as he slept, Joseph told him, "You are going to be executed, you're going to be hung on a pole, and the birds will eat of your flesh," and so on. That was not so good. But the other individual, he had a good position. He said, "You're going to be once more the cupbearer to the king," and so on. Joseph was in the right place at the right time as he interpreted these dreams, but he's not aware of it. If he had the presence of God, but he was still a prisoner. He might have been able to interpret those dreams and give the individuals advice of what was going to happen and what was going to be taking place within their lives, and he might have been, looked at suspiciously in some ways. He may have been looked at as a great individual to the one individual and a terrible individual to the other man that was going to be dead. But as we say, he was interpreting dreams. And have you ever felt like you were doing everything right, but everything is going wrong? No matter what you do, everything goes wrong. You can get up in the morning, you can just feel like this is going to be a great day, and down through the hours of that day, everything seems to be going wrong. Everybody seems to cross us, and we just don't know how to handle it and so on. And again, I say, it almost seems like we don't know how to handle the wrong, but we have trouble with the right. We just don't know how to say we don't know how to say how good it is and when when praise and acclaim is given to us, we just, like I had said before, we turn red and we're nervous and we have dry mouth or whatever the case might be. We can't spit out our words like we'd like to, and we're just to the point where I just don't know how to express myself and tell you. We hate people making a fuss over us, and down deep we enjoy it, but we like to know how to react to this. We feel embarrassed sometimes. If you've ever visited, in your family and so on, and somebody tells, well, Ron did this and Ron did that and everything was right, and then your aunt wants a kiss you or your grandma wants a hug you or so on, and you're just you just want to wiggle out of that, I don't want to have that. You're happy about it, but the idea of it is all the attention that you're getting is not really appreciated. But as we say, Joseph's story, the story does not end in prison. Another man has a dream, and he thought these dreams might have a meaning. And this was Pharaoh himself, if you remember, the 7 fatted calves and the 7 lean calves. And as Pharaoh begins to express this to Joseph, he says, I remember everything about them, but I don't know what it means. I don't know how to interpret it. I don't know how to react to it. And Joseph was able to give him the interpretation that was necessary. God helped him. And with that on his mind and thinking out loud, he said, I wish I knew Pharaoh said, I wish I knew where I could go to have an interpretation of what this means of the 7 fatted calves and the 7 lean calves, and then the 7 grains, or the wheat of the plentiful wheat, and then the less wheat, and so on. So he said, I wish I knew. And God was very much in this scene, and the cupbearer is quick to tell him of Joseph. The individual Joseph had said, your life is going to be spared, and you're going to be handed back to your position, and you're going to be the cupbearer. He told Pharaoh rather, Joseph, the man that you know, the man that is in prison, he told me things what I had to do and what was going to take place in my mind. He might be able to give the information and the help to you that you need. And so Pharaoh called him. He's in the wrong place, I might say. He's in jail, but now Pharaoh calls him, and he's going to be in the right place at the right time. He doesn't have to look far, and so Joseph is brought to him, and we know the story. Joseph gives him the lowdown, and we look at Pharaoh's reaction, and we see that Pharaoh is very happy with what Joseph is saying to him and very appreciative of how he interpreted the dream. And he says to Pharaoh, or to Joseph, I'm going to make you in charge of all of these things, and you're going to be second in command here in Egypt, and we're going to work together in order that when the plentiful years are here, we can store away our grain and we can be having plenty to eat and supply. And in the 7 lean years, you'll be able to dish out this in such a manner that everybody will be able to eat as we thought as we go. And so we know the story. Joseph gives him the lowdown, and look at Pharaoh's reaction. And as we have read verse 43, he says, you're going to have this and you're going to do that, and individuals are going to bow down to you, and people are going to see you when you ride by in your chariot, that they'll bow to you. Here is the first gold medal awarded, we might say, in history. Many of us watched the Olympics this past couple of months back, and we watched those athletes compete in the places where they were competitive of, and we saw our Americans as they competed. And I think as we think of Michael Spence, of how he swam to win all the medals that he did, and I think most of us were kind of proud that we were American when he was handed gold medals and so on. And as we look at Joseph, he's to the point where he's receiving a gold medal from Pharaoh himself. He had robes given to him and a ring that only Pharaoh had, and he gave Joseph power over all the land. Joseph had been in prison. Now he's in power all over the land. He is second in command. You talk about an award. You talk about something that took place in a man's life that he would be embarrassed about a little bit, we might say, or wondering how to handle it. Joseph was that point. And we're not giving any indication of how Joseph reacted to this praise and honor, but it wouldn't surprise me that there was a tear or two that came down his cheek, realizing that God God was still with him, God was still for him, and that God was working in his life. There might have been a prayer of thanksgiving to God that I'm out of prison, that I'm free, I'm able to do the things that I'm supposed to do, that Pharaoh has ordered me to do, and I'm going to be appreciative of the job that I have and do the things in this land or in Egypt that needs to be done. There was a prayer of thanksgiving to God, I'm sure, that he thanked God for his release from prison. He thanked God that he had watched over him and spared his life, and that, Pharaoh hadn't got disgusted and killed him as long as with other individuals perhaps. He gave him power over all the land. And as I said, it wouldn't surprise me that there was a prayer or two. There was a great thank you to Pharaoh himself, I'm sure. He just didn't, take this honor and say, I deserved it. This is something I've dreamt about, something I need. I'm sure that he said, thank you, Pharaoh, for all the trust that you have in me. I thank you for the power that you've given to me. I thank you for the way that we can work together in order to supply the needs to people around about us. And let us not forget for one moment that God isn't aware of us and knows exactly where we're at and what's happening in our lives. We might be going through a dry spell spiritually, we might say, where everything just seems to be going wrong. We don't feel the presence of the Lord in a way that we have felt before. No matter what we do seems to turn out wrong. And we're just, we're down in the dumps, as I talked about a couple of weeks ago anyway, that instead of having joy in our heart, we have the sorrow and the grief and the unhappiness within us. But if we're faithful to him, he does bless. He does take care of us, and he wants to continue to bless us. And there will be dry spells in our life. There will be times when we're tried. There will be times when we don't feel as close to God as we do at other times. But if we'll stay faithful and true to God, God will come through, and he'll help us, and he'll make the difference within our lives. The Oscars or the Emmys rather, and whatever else there is, takes time each year to honor and success and achievement. And, out of curiosity, sometimes I'll watch these shows just to see how people react and so on. I don't know what they're talking about. I mean, they talk about shows that they have been a part of and presentations that they've been adhering to. I have no idea, but I like to watch their reaction when they're called and their name is spread, and the cameras, go over the or over that audience and begin to single out that individual that has been awarded or is going to be awarded a prize or a trophy or whatever. And they just don't know how to react sometimes. You've seen them stand up, and sometimes a tear comes to their eyes. Sometimes they raise their fist in power or in victory. Sometimes they're so thankful that they can, receive this kind of award, and they give praise to others as well. Not just to themselves, but they praise others for helping them along the way. And Joseph had a lot going for him. He had kept himself pure. Instead of yielding to the temptation of Pharaoh's wife, instead of just making a pain of himself and a nuisance, he had held himself clear and walked right and did right. He was faithful to God, and he served God when God called upon him, when he was called upon. He never broke his relationship with his heavenly Father. He was exactly where God wanted him to be. He was at the right place at the right time, we might say, and he was receiving the good that would come to him. Too many times in the church, we would rather memorialize rather than give something to the individual while they're still alive. We like to give a memorial to an individual. This pew has been bought by such and such an individual, or these altars have been placed in such and memory and such another. It's good to give memory or good awards rather while people are still alive, and where we can appreciate what they've done and they can appreciate what they have accomplished and what has come about to them. Sure, we get red-faced. if we're called out, you know, and we're asked to come to the platform or wherever we're going at, and we get red-faced because we just don't know how to react to it. We just, we have an idea what might be going to be said, but we just come meekly, you know, to the front of the church or the front of the auditorium, and we just hear everything that is being said to us. Their assignments was carried out in full detail. They did the job. They were wonderful in their love and their appreciation and so on. And here we are in having success, and this individual was a part of it. And like I say, we just don't know how. We just don't have the words to express ourselves at that time. We want to express ourselves. We want to say thank you and so on, but words come slow. Our minds don't work as quickly and as fast as we would like it to do, so that we can give all the praise and all the credit to individuals that have helped us. Our tongues won't move sometimes, and we get nervous and embarrassed, and we can't talk right. We say something, but we don't know what we really said, whether it was right or not. But this is a part of being right. It's good to be right. It's good sometimes just to know that we did the right thing, and that